Discover the amazing secrets of Egyptian mythology, 5 hidden truths that will transform your understanding of identity. The rain poured heavily outside, creating a rhythmic drumming sound against the library's windows that collided ominously with Melissa's racing thoughts. She stood in the back room, surrounded by stacks of dusty shelves, each corner crowded with the remnants of forgotten tales. Today, it wasn't just the usual patrons seeking refuge among the stories, it was her own fractured dreams calling to her. As a 42-year-old librarian, she had spent her life shelving books and catering to the community's needs, with fleeting thoughts of her own desires brushed aside like unreturned overdue notices. But the crinkled manuscript lying open in front of her suggested something more, a doorway to understanding not just mythology, but herself. With trembling hands, she traced the symbols on the yellowed pages, each marking igniting a spark of anticipation deep within her core. Could these references to Egyptian deities actually connect to her own lineage? What if her desire for knowledge was more than just idle curiosity, but a quest for roots? Yet immediately, that joy swelled and crashed against her familiar feelings of guilt and doubt. What would her mother, alone for so long, think of her delving into the past, especially now that she was losing grip on the present? "Melissa! What are you doing back here?" Greg, the ambitious young man who had risen to prominence within their modest library, stormed into the room, his voice echoing with arrogance. He had always bullied her ambitions, dismissing her interests with a wave of his hand, just like he dismissed her entire presence. "You're wasting your time. Those books don't amount to anything. They're just dusty junk." The words clawed at her. The lingering vision of her father, who had left in search of something glittering and unattainable, pulled at her heartstrings. Greg was right, she had never meant to cause trouble. Yet, she felt defiant, standing on the brink of an epiphany. "They could mean something to me," she faltered, the quiver in her voice hovering between hope and trepidation. Should she confront his relentless ambition or chase the revelation taking root within her? "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." The tension crackled in the air. Suddenly, a thought crept in. Could her father's pursuits tie them to the very myths she found solace in? Lost in her mind's whirring gears, she surfaced only to find Greg's piercing gaze locking onto her, a predator suffocating a fading light. He leaned closer, towering over the table, and spat venomous words that felt like betrayal. "I'll report you, Melissa. You'll regret even thinking about taking ideas that belong to real scholars." His claim reverberated in her gut like the echo of her father's decisions to abandon her family for ambition. Melissa felt her chest tighten, each breath heavy with despair. The question gnawed at her: what was the price of pursuing her own narrative against the daunting shadows from her past? Would she risk everything for a chance to reclaim her identity and forge a new reality, or would she succumb to the oppressiveness of Greg and the weight of her family's legacy? Caught between the legacies of ancient myths and the present deceit, Melissa held her breath, the manuscript's secrets swirling above her like constellations waiting to be interpreted. Tension gripped her like a vice, and she felt certain that answers lay somewhere in the unfolding pages, in the heart of the family story she had yet to fully embrace. With each passing moment, the dichotomy of doubt and determination collided, leaving her future hanging in the precarious balance of discovery, a parallel world eager to unravel, waiting just beyond her grasp. The weight of Greg's threat stung like a cold wind, wrapping around her throat, squeezing tight. It was a choice she had never anticipated needing to make at this moment. Should she confront him and assert her will, or flee into the shadows, her discoveries lost to the pulsating anxiety flooding her mind? Melissa took a cautious step back, glancing at the manuscript. Those writings could possibly reshape her understanding, not only of history but of herself. Each page whispered secrets of identity, of existence beyond her daily life classified by routine. The symbols craved attention, bore the essence of countless stories yearning to be unearthed, and yet, here she was, shrinking beneath another's ambition. Do you really want to be insignificant all your life? The words fought their way through the tangle of fears, surfacing unexpectedly. She couldn't let Greg's contempt condemn her passions. The continued presence of those long-forgotten deities spoken of within the manuscript trembled at the back of her mind, asserting themselves like a tidal wave of hidden potential. It was more than just a professional defiance, it was personal, instinctively tied to an awakening that had long been dormant. Melissa locked her gaze onto Greg's, refusing to be swayed by his condescending power. This is about more than achievements defined by others. This is about understanding where I come from and charting a path for who I might become. Her voice trembled, the declaration unfurling like a flag capturing the wind. Beneath her skin, her heartbeat quickened. For the first time, she felt the tremor of defiance stirring within, an echo of resilience she had kept hidden for decades. Don't presume to lecture me on significance, she added, her words punctuated by a new steadiness. In that moment, internal battles nudged her closer to a critical realization about herself. She needed and wanted to pursue her story, and if Greg wanted to undermine that pursuit, he would have to confront the resolve she was beginning to build. Greg stepped back, a flicker of surprise flaring across his face. Yet, his innate arrogance wouldn't allow him to back down completely. You think you can dig into ancient myths and unravel some kind of personal epiphany? It's ridiculous. His voice was laced with mockery, yet Melissa sensed a thread of doubt nagging at him. As their standoff settled into an electric silence, Melissa felt a siren call urging her forward. Archaeological traits were cradled inside the urge to discover, to peel back the layers of her own narrative woven through time, much like those she was reading about. In confronting her past, she realized that power was only as tangible as one allowed it to be. The manuscript began to take on new significance, shimmering with potential as the revelations within danced just out of her grasp. With each beat of uncertainty in her heart, she instinctively knew one truth: her path diverged from her family's shortcomings, moving forward despite the shadows. Suddenly, amidst the tension, a faint noise broke through from the front of the library, a crash, a voice raised in anger. Her heart raced. Was it another confrontation looming, or a possible distraction revealing hidden truths waiting to emerge? Melissa turned away from Greg, propelled by instinct and resolve, drawn toward the sound, fate intertwined with her quest for identity. Would she face a new confrontation that would shape her path further, or would there be opportunities for revelations hidden in the chaos? The darkness and the potential light awaited her desperate choices. The shattering sound echoed through the library, ricocheting off the dusty shelves, pulling Melissa deeper into the unfolding chaos. Each hurried step felt like a heartbeat of momentum as she pushed past a labyrinth of bookshelves, her pulse thrumming a steady rhythm of determination. This was not merely a chance encounter, it was another opportunity to assert her narrative, to pull herself out of Greg's looming shadow. As she rounded a corner, the scene gelled into focus. A book cart lay overturned, its contents scattered like discarded dreams. A patron, a disheveled older man, shouted angrily at a librarian, his finger pointing accusatorily. Something in his wild demeanor resonated with the tempest brewing in Melissa's heart. He was visibly agitated, and perhaps, beneath the surface, he too was engaged in a battle for relevance, lost among the pages of history. "Excuse me, sir," she called out, surprising herself with the authority in her voice. The librarian looked up, her brow furrowed with concern. The man turned, indignant. This was her moment to embody the strength she had just begun to uncover. "What's the issue?" she pressed gently, cutting through the tension. "I was looking for a specific book, and she dismissed me." His voice cracked, hinting at bigger frustrations simmering beneath the surface. Melissa felt a surge of empathy, recognizing the reflection of her own struggles against dismissal. "Can I help?" she offered, stepping forward with a newfound confidence that felt foreign yet exhilarating. It was a small act, but it was rooted in her growing desire to engage, not merely retreat. The man's anger flickered like a candle flame in the wind, replaced gradually by surprise. He hesitated, weighing her sincerity against his disappointment, before finally nodding. The librarian glanced at Melissa and, perhaps sensing her intent, joined in. "Let's find it together," she said, her voice soft but steady, an encouraging companion in this chaotic moment. As they joined forces, Melissa felt the weight of her hesitations dissolve. It wasn't just about finding a book, it was about asserting herself, about rewriting the dialogue that had long held her captive. In that moment, she discovered that leadership did not only arise from grand actions but from the simple act of stepping forward, offering assistance, and confronting chaos. The three of them combed through the aisles, and soon enough, they unearthed the volume the man sought, an obscure account of Egyptian mythology that had slipped behind a row of encyclopedias. His face lit up with gratitude, and Melissa felt a warmth unfurling in her chest. "I can't thank you enough," he said, his previous anger now dissipating like mist under sunlight. He turned to the librarian and her, eyes bright with sincerity. "You both have no idea how much this means to me." With an exchange of smiles, Melissa realized that this small victory offered a tremendous lesson. She was capable of influencing others' lives directly. Her spontaneous decision to help not only fortified her self-esteem but also magnified the importance of human connection, something Greg had dismissed throughout their conversation. As the man walked away, clutching his book as though it were a precious artifact, Melissa took a deep breath, absorbing the moment. Each encounter shaped her increasingly. However, lurking beneath her triumph was an electric undercurrent of uncertainty. Greg loomed larger in her mind, his disdain a dark cloud threatening her newfound resolve. Could she truly gather the courage needed to chase the revelations hidden within the manuscript, to explore the complexities of her past and present without succumbing to external pressures? Determined footsteps guided her back toward Greg, but the memory of the library encounter lingered in her mind like an anchor. She had tasted the power of agency over her decisions, and she was ready to confront whatever challenge awaited her next, a meeting of minds that might expose him as just another obstacle in her quest. The real confrontation was still ahead, and her heart raced in anticipation of what lay ahead. Her unfolding path was rich with uncertainty and possibility, and she was ready to face the storm of emotions awaiting her. What truths could emerge once she confronted Greg again? The answers loomed tantalizingly close, shrouded in the battle of wills yet to unfold. The library felt like a refuge, yet it was a threshold she had to cross. Melissa took a steadying breath, channeling the warmth from her recent victory. She had acted decisively, marking a milestone in her journey. Would she return to hesitation now? Greg awaited her, his imposing presence an unsettling reminder that older patterns could easily reclaim her. As she stepped outside, the cool air met her resolve with refreshing clarity. She could not allow Greg's doubts to overcome her. The path forward was hers to define, and she clung to that thought like a lifeline. With renewed determination, she approached her office, the ticking clock contrasting sharply with her racing heart. Inside, Greg sat at his desk, reviewing documents as if preparing for an impending storm. He looked up when she entered, a skeptical arch in his brow. The moment had come. Would she falter with his gaze upon her, or would she emerge stronger? "I need to discuss the manuscript," she said, her voice steadying as she squared her shoulders. "Really? Based on what criteria? You've spent more time organizing those dusty archives than actually understanding the material," he replied casually, but the underlying tone was undeniably patronizing. Melissa felt a flicker of doubt creep in, but the memory of the man's gratitude from the library surged back. She refused to allow Greg's disdain to cloud her ambition. "I want to explore its historical context, particularly the lesser-known aspects of Egyptian mythology. My instincts say there's more to it than what's commonly known." Greg's expression hardened, but she pressed on. "There are empirical truths hidden in those tales. They reflect not just the past but aspects of human nature that resonate even now. There could be connections we're ignoring." For a moment, his gaze was assessing, as if weighing her words against some invisible scale. "And what makes you think you're the right person to dig deeper? Your experience is minimal, especially compared to others in the field." A seed of frustration took root in her chest, and she understood that it wasn't just about the manuscript or the research, it was also about gaining validation. His dismissal wasn't merely a challenge to her capability, it felt personal, wounding. Yet, rather than simmering in anger, she channeled it into clarity. "Because I want to uncover those connections," she said, meeting his gaze. "I see value in exploring the narratives of those dismissed, ignored, or forgotten. Just like you seem to dismiss me." Silence hung heavily between them. It was a risky move, revealing her truth, but it could be the catalyst she needed. Greg's expression shifted, a fleeting glimpse of surprise before he smirked, slapping the table lightly. "So, you want to turn your frustration into a project? Fascinating idea, but you need more than just a whim." At that moment, she had a choice. Fight back immediately, or take a calculated pause, allowing space for the confrontation to settle. She envisioned the book she had just helped the man find, that memory enveloped her, igniting a confidence she had yet to fully embrace. "I'm not asking for permission, Greg. I'm suggesting a new direction that might benefit the whole team," she countered, her voice firm and unwavering. "If you can't see the potential here, maybe you're the one with the closed mind." He regarded her, surprise mixed with annoyance flickering in his eyes. "You're bold today. Interesting tactic. But I'm not swayed by theatrics." Melissa held her breath, recognizing the familiar urge to retreat. But unlike before, she now understood that she was constructing her boundaries, her narrative. This was about more than just impressing Greg, it was about asserting her worth in a field where she had often felt invisible. The tension thickened, the air charged with possibility. Could she ignite a spark of change? Or would she remain shackled to expectations? "Let me prove it," she said, breaking the silence, her pulse quickening at the risk of her next words. "You might find that I can bring insights you wouldn't expect, something beyond your usual scope." Greg studied her, his incredulity morphing into something closer to intrigue. But she sensed the challenge still hung in the air, a precarious balance that awaited resolution. What would her next move be? Would she rise or fall, and how far was she willing to go to stake her claim? The outcome lay in the uncharted territory ahead, and her determination surged. One opportunity led to another, and she was prepared to step boldly into the unknown. As she locked eyes with Greg again, a once familiar fear began to shift into excitement. Could this confrontation lead not just to discovery within the manuscript, but to a revelation within herself? The stakes were higher than ever, and she was ready to confront whatever came next. What powers lay dormant within her waiting for the catalyst of action to awaken? Greg's eyebrows raised slightly, curiosity peeking behind an otherwise skeptical demeanor. "Prove it?" he repeated, voicing his doubt as he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "That sounds like quite the undertaking for someone with so little experience." Melissa stood at the threshold of a mental battleground, her heart racing with uncertainty and determination. She saw the challenge in his eyes, but it was more than a challenge, it was an invitation to redefine who she could be in her professional landscape. "Consider it a research proposal," she replied, her voice slicing through the tension. "I'm ready to take the lead on analyzing how those characters and narratives reflect societal norms and issues during their respective times. It's ripe for examination, and I'm certain I can bring fresh insights that could significantly enhance our project's depth." Greg continued to scrutinize her, the smirk fading to a neutral expression. "And how do you propose to execute this project? What steps would you take? You realize that without a well-defined plan, this falls flat." Her mind raced, yet clarity began to settle in. "I propose doing a targeted examination of existing literature, comparative analysis with current psychological theories, and interviews with experts in the field of mythology. I can draft a preliminary outline and present it to the team, showcasing the potential implications of this research." Feeling a surge of adrenaline, she was surprised at how her words flowed without hesitation, revealing thoughts she'd nurtured in the quiet corners of her mind. Greg leaned forward, intrigued but still cautious. "Impressive, I must say. But you should know, this department doesn't simply entertain half-baked ideas. You want my backing." You need a compelling opening statement that highlights the importance of your research. Then I'll craft a proposal that not only captivates but demonstrates how this research aligns with our objectives and the advancement of scholarship in this area," Melissa declared, her voice gaining volume and confidence. A fire ignited in her, fueled by the knowledge that she was stepping outside the role of a passive player. "Let's talk about feasibility. Are you prepared for the inevitable pushback from those who are less inclined to embrace new ideas?" he asked, a hint of respect now coloring his tone. "Not only am I prepared for that, Greg, but I welcome it. I want to engage with those opinions, they will only make my argument stronger. I'm ready to stand firm." The room pulsed with a new intensity, the air thick with ambition and an underlying promise of growth. She was finally forcing herself onto center stage, peeling away layers of self-doubt that had held her back for years. "All right then," Greg said, leaning back again. "You have a week to draft that proposal. Bring it to me, and if it impresses, I'll present it to the department." Melissa felt a wellspring of excitement ricochet through her, but the stakes were undeniably high. One misstep could send her spiraling back into the shadow of indecision. "I'll prove it," she asserted, not just to him, but to herself. With a firm nod, she turned to leave, the taste of ambition invigorating her senses. She felt a lightness that came from taking a significant step forward. But as she closed the door, uncertainty lurked at the edges of her mind. What if her proposal didn't resonate? What if her insights fell flat in a sea of skepticism? A bubbling tension intertwined with determination propelled her heart as she made her way home. She envisioned countless scenarios: a presentation that stirs applause, or perhaps another round of dismissal from those who had long undervalued her potential. Gathering her thoughts, she took a deep breath. She would explore the narratives threaded in the mythology and possibly unlock secrets that could reshape perspectives. The power of the ancient tales resonated with modern understanding, and she would not squander her opportunity to uncover those connections. As she walked in the dusky twilight, a realization dawned upon her: this was merely the beginning. With self-doubt at bay and purpose ignited, she understood that the journey ahead would be laden with unexpected challenges yet shimmering with the promise of discovery. The time had come to face her former self. Would she remain that timid assistant or transform into a historical researcher capable of pushing boundaries? And as she peered into her future, she recognized a new urgency. The most significant revelations often arise in the unlikeliest moments, and she was ready to embrace them all. But first, she had to conquer the proposal and show the team her true capabilities. The research might hold answers, but did it also harbor secrets about herself waiting to be unveiled in this ambitious pursuit? As soon as Melissa stepped through her front door, the responsibilities of the day flooded in, almost tangible in their weight. She noted the clock ticking away in the background, each second a reminder of the week that loomed heavily before her. The challenge she now faced was monumental, not merely to write a proposal, but to present herself as a credible researcher in a sea of seasoned professionals. Sinking into her desk chair, she stared at the blank screen of her laptop. The cursor blinked defiantly at her as if mocking her uncertainty. Could she really pull this off? The doubt crept in like a shadow, whispering the very fears she had fought to silence over the past few months. She resolved not to let those voices drown out her newfound determination. With a deep breath, she turned the solitude of her home office into a fortress of ambition. Melissa opened a new document and began writing her thoughts, each keystroke a declaration of intent. She outlined her vision for how mythology narrated societal fears and aspirations, revealing insights that could offer modern interpretations. As the words filled the page, she surprised herself with the depth of her analysis. She explored themes of power and morality, drawing connections between ancient texts and contemporary social issues. Each character she dissected became a puzzle piece of the greater human narrative, illustrating not just a past that was foreign but a mirror reflecting today's world. Yet, the writing felt more like a battle than a dance. Memories of dismissive remarks from peers whispered at the back of her mind, an incessant reminder of her heightened vulnerability. What if the insights she was revealing were misguided? What if her interpretations misinterpreted the very fabric of what she sought to define? With each completed section, the initial exhilaration mixed with perspiring anxiety, weaving a complex tapestry of self-doubt. Desperate for clarity, she stepped away from the screen and made her way to the window. The night sky glittered with stars, each one a reminder of countless stories, myths, and the evolution of thought. She recalled herself as a child, bogged down by the mythological tales her grandmother would share, stories that fed her imagination and sparked her interest in the deeper intentions behind each narrative. Focusing on those memories lit a flicker of resolve within. Melissa realized she wasn't just a passive participant in the academic exchange, she was a conduit, the light bridging the wisdom of the past with modern sensibilities. This viewpoint became the backbone of her proposal. Returning to her desk, she poured herself back into the process, determination knitting everything into place. By the time she reached the final draft, every word echoed her conviction. She crafted a compelling opening statement, directly addressing the significance of the research. This was not merely an academic formality, it was her declaration of competence. As she hit save and leaned back in her chair, a flood of disbelief mingled with exhilaration took over. She had done it, she had maneuvered through fear and uncertainty to produce something meaningful. Yet, lurking beneath this hopeful triumph was the reality that she would soon have to share her work. A pulse of anxiety wrapped itself around her as she thought of Greg and the department. What if they rejected her? This thought gnawed persistently at the edges of her mind, morphing her euphoric high into a simmering pool of dread. Confronting this fear, she recognized it as a necessary ingredient of growth. It was a choice now. She could either embrace this moment, poised at the brink of professional validation, or shrink back into the shadows she had just fought so hard to escape. When she finally turned to her mirror, looking herself squarely in the eyes, she saw the reflection of who she could be. A mix of uncertainty and determination filled her gaze, forging a silent vow. She was about to confront not just the skepticism of others, but the remnants of self-doubt that had shadowed her for far too long. The proposal in her grasp felt so much more than just a document, it was a manifestation of her growth. Would it pave the path for something revolutionary or further tether her to the past? The answer lay ahead, waiting for the moment when she would finally present her work to the team, each ticking second unraveling the anticipation and fear alike. But one question lingered: when would she stop being afraid and start being the powerful scholar she had begun to become? With resolve tightening around her heart, Melissa knew that the moment of truth was drawing near. Would she seize it or let it slip away into doubt? The dawn broke with a bittersweet sweetness as Melissa prepared for the day's presentation. Morning light filtered through her window, illuminating the array of notes spread across her desk like shards of glass. Each piece represented a reflection of her time spent wrestling with ideas, and now they served as both a guide and a reminder of her vulnerability. She dressed meticulously, choosing a blazer she had reserved for occasions when first impressions would matter most. In the mirror, her reflection seemed stronger today, the remnants of self-denial giving way to the confidence she had started to cultivate. The nagging doubts from the night before still lingered but felt less suffocating. Today, she would present not just a proposal but a vision. On her way to the university, the bustling streets felt like a new world. Cars rushed past, while people hurriedly exchanged thoughts and laughter. Melissa took a deep breath, forcing herself to absorb the energy around her. This was her environment, she belonged here. Yet as her foot crossed the threshold of the university building, a thread of anxiety twisted in her gut. The prospect of standing before her peers, particularly Greg, loomed large. Would they see her as an equal, or would she remain the outlier? The conference room was filled with her colleagues, and the atmosphere hummed with chatter. A blend of paper rustling and shuffling feet amplified her heartbeat, each thump resonating like a drum. She slid into a seat at the front, setting her laptop on the table, and began flipping through her notes. As she did, she caught Greg's eye. A silent cue passed between them, a validation mingled with skepticism. She swelled with a mixture of disdain and determination as her mind raced. The presentation began, and Greg took the lead, outlining the day's agenda. As he spoke, Melissa's heart thudded imperatively, preparing her for the moment she had both anticipated and dreaded. She focused on her breathing, the air filling her lungs with both fear and resolve. When the time came for her to present, she stood, gripping the edges of the podium like lifelines, the first words fell out into the silence, hesitant yet firm, as she introduced her research. She watched the faces in the room, some interested, others skeptical. A tight ball of apprehension clenched around her throat as she navigated through her slides. Each diagram and analysis reflected her immersion into the subject, her passion threading from one slide to another, stitching together a narrative that intertwined ancient wisdom and contemporary relevance. But then came the questions. Greg's voice cut through, sharp with scrutiny. He delved into her interpretations, challenging everything she had presented. How can you take such an intricate myth and apply it to modern society? Isn't that a bit reductive? The room fell silent, the question hanging like a storm cloud. Melissa felt her pulse racing, but something uncoiled inside her. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment. Instead of wilting under pressure, she found herself grounding her response in the very essence of her work. My research seeks to uncover the underlying fears and aspirations that continue to resonate through time, she replied, her voice gaining strength. It's not about reduction, but about revelation. Each ensuing question revealed layers of her own insecurities, yet she faced them head-on. The debate transformed into a dance, an intellectual sparring match that ignited her passion further. By the time she reached the end of her presentation, she felt something shift within herself. Potential and purpose combined into a singular force. She mattered in this space. As the meeting ended, applause filled the room. Their reactions danced on a threshold, some faces glimmered with respect, while others bore doubt. She caught sight of Greg, his expression unreadable, a mixture of admiration and continued skepticism. As she stepped down from the podium, the reality settled in. She had emerged from the cocoon of fear and had begun to test her wings, yet a single thought punctured her satisfaction. Was this applause genuine, or merely a polite gesture to placate her? Doubt crept back in, urging her to question the meaning behind their support. She needed clarity. She needed to know where she truly stood amongst her peers. Melissa? A soft voice broke through her reverie. It was Coda, one of her closest colleagues. Can we talk about your presentation? I think there's a lot to unpack. With that, another door opened, but the path ahead remained uncertain, and her journey was far from over. Would this be a conversation of encouragement or a companion of critique? Melissa hesitated, caught between the thrill of inquiry and the trepidation of exposing her vulnerabilities again. Coda's calm demeanor, a contrast to her racing thoughts, beckoned her toward a deeper discussion. As they moved to a quieter corner of the conference room, she could feel the eyes of her colleagues on her, assessing her transition from fear to confidence, though still riddled with doubt. Your presentation was powerful, Coda began, a warm smile forming on his face. You really seem to have found your voice. The compliment settled lightly on Melissa, briefly vanquishing her uncertainties. Thank you, she said, her voice tinged with gratefulness, but her mind buzzed with questions. Did I come across as competent? Or was it an amateurish attempt? Coda chuckled softly. I think you led with conviction. But Greg's questions, he has his reservations. You need to be prepared for that. Melissa nodded absently. She could still feel the weight of Greg's scrutiny, each question digging deeper into her self-doubt. But with Coda's admission, the slightest spark of defiance flickered within her. I want to evolve. I need to confront those doubts, and not just at the podium. Then take this as an opportunity, Coda encouraged, leaning closer. Reach out to Greg. Ask him for feedback. His perspective could shed light on areas you might want to explore further. Melissa swallowed hard, the thought of approaching Greg felt daunting. But part of her recognized that this could be a pivotal moment. It meant willingly entering another arena where she would confront the very barriers that tightened around her confidence. What if he doesn't see the value? She questioned, the familiar thread of worry creeping back in. Then that means he's not the only voice in your head, Coda replied, his tone firm yet understanding. You're not defined by anyone else's perceptions. You've got a unique perspective worth defending. Use that. Melissa clenched her fists, the energy from their conversation building within her. While fear flitted in and out, so did resolve. She recalled the strength she felt while speaking her truth, the energy of intellectual sparring ignited a fire deep inside. But could she match that energy when it came to conversations outside the presentation, especially with someone like Greg? All right, she conceded, her voice steadying. After our session, I'll talk to him. I'll ask for feedback, but I'll also defend my position. The commitment surged through her like a jolt of electricity. Good, Coda replied, his approval grounding her decision. But it's also important to listen. Growth can come from places you least expect. With renewed determination, Melissa stepped out of the conference room, her breathing more measured. The bustling hallways filled with chatter and laughter buzzed around her, reminding her of the vibrant life existing outside her immediate worries. Yet, the uncertainty of how Greg would react loomed ahead like a specter lurking in the shadows. As she made her way to where Greg had settled at a table in the faculty lounge, preparation mixed with anxiety gushed through her veins. She rehearsed potential questions and responses, but self-doubt began to claw its way back. What if he dismissed her completely or questioned her competence in a way that sent her spiraling? Taking a deep breath, she paused just outside the lounge door, collecting herself. This dialogue could mean uncovering hidden depths within herself, revealing either strengths or weaknesses she had yet to confront. It felt like a plunge into unknown waters, but growth seldom came without discomfort. Melissa. Greg called out as he spotted her, a hint of surprise flashing across his face. I didn't expect to see you here. Hi, Greg, she responded, fighting the urge to retreat. I was hoping to get your thoughts on my presentation. The moment hung in the air, two opposing forces about to collide. This was more than a conversation, it was a crossroads. Would she emerge more grounded, or would the discussion shatter her newfound confidence? Just then, a shadow crossed her face as Greg's gaze narrowed slightly, gauging the sincerity of her request. The time had come to face not just Greg, but the truth within herself. Melissa felt her pulse quicken as she searched for the right words to break the tension thickening the atmosphere. Greg's narrowed eyes were both challenging and calculating, and she couldn't help but sense the weight of every unspoken judgment pressing down on her. Sure, he said slowly, let us talk about it. What specifically do you want feedback on? His voice was devoid of warmth, sending a chill into her resolve. Drawing on the resolve she had felt moments earlier, she took a deep breath to keep her composure. I'd like your thoughts on the overall structure, and perhaps any areas where you think I could improve, she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. Greg leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. The structure was fine, but the content lacked depth. You made some claims that should have been backed by data or more contextual arguments. Melissa nodded, absorbing his criticism. Each word felt like a sharp prod pushing her deeper into the realization that the stakes were higher than she had anticipated. I understand. I focused more on passion than on extensive research. I suppose I thought that would be enough. Passion is great, but it can't replace rigor, he responded, tilting his head slightly, as if assessing her. If you want to be taken seriously, you need to merge both. Your audience will appreciate the balance. His directness pierced through the remnants of her confidence. She briefly considered retreating back into her shell, the option of silence looking more comfortable by the second. But she reminded herself of Coda's words, this was her opportunity. Thank you, Greg. I'll give it more thought. But I also believe the emotional aspect is significant for engagement, she asserted, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. That could be true, but at the core of any strong argument is evidence. Each emotional appeal needs to be synchronized with data to carry weight. Otherwise, it might come off as mere rhetoric. His response sparked a flicker of defiance within her. I concur, but can emotional narratives coexist with rigorous argumentation without undermining each other? I think that blending the two can make for a more compelling presentation. Greg looked momentarily taken aback, then nodded slowly, conceding a point. It's an interesting angle. But in a professional setting, you have to prioritize logical flow over emotional appeal unless you have significant backing. Melissa felt a wave of exhilaration wash over her. This back and forth was invigorating. She had anticipated doubt, fear, even judgment. Yet, this exchange felt like a dance revealing both her vulnerabilities and her growing edge as a professional. I appreciate your perspective. I'm challenged, but in a good way. There was a brief moment of silence as Greg watched her, his expression softening just the slightest. You've got potential, Melissa. But you need to tackle the layers with actionable insights. That'll fortify your positions. With those words, a quiet determination settled within her. She realized that this wasn't just about her presentation, it had become a broader journey into embracing her authority in a space that had felt foreign until now. I'll start pulling together more data points and craft my arguments with both logic and storytelling in mind. Good approach, he replied, his demeanor shifting as he acknowledged her commitment. Let me know if you want to brainstorm. A different set of eyes can often help. I'd appreciate that, Melissa answered, a newfound collaboration igniting a lightness in her chest. As she left the lounge, the air outside felt charged with possibility. The initial anxiety had transformed into motivation, another step toward owning her voice. Yet, just as she turned the corner, doubt crept back. Had she gained Greg's respect, or merely postponed the inevitable critique of her competence? The question lingered in her mind, overshadowing her small victory. She realized that while small advancements could lead to growth, they also laid bare the struggle that lay ahead in solidifying her place in this intricate world of professional discourse. And with that uncertainty looming larger, she set her sights on another challenge, her next presentation, where she would weave together the threads of passion and evidence. Would she succeed in creating a tapestry that appealed to both the heart and the mind, or would the struggle continue? The library's warm glow enveloped Melissa as she returned that evening, her heart still echoing the electric tenacity of her earlier confrontation with Greg. The victory over self-doubt surged inside her. It was more than substantive feedback, it was a confirmation of her capability to assert herself. The journey through vulnerability and rejection had trimmed the shadows from her mind, illuminating a path of genuine growth and purpose. Flipping through her notes and reflecting on her confrontation, she felt a burgeoning confidence surging through her veins. No longer captive to external opinions, Melissa now envisioned her place among the scholarly elite. She sat down at her desk, capturing thoughts that surged from her, formulating plans to intertwine rigorous analysis with narrative flair that would bring ancient Egyptian mythology to life. There was a story waiting to be unfolded, and she was its sole architect. Drawn in by a sudden thought, she opened the manuscript again. Each symbol whispered not merely of Egypt's storied past but now boldly reflected her own metamorphosis. Unlocking this academic treasure became part of a personal crusade, one that would reveal not only the narrative of the gods but her continuous evolution toward self-actualization. She realized this ancient wisdom was not far from contemporary issues, intersecting and converging like rivers flowing into the sea. Days turned into weeks as Melissa diligently crafted her proposal into actionable research, refining her arguments while embodying a newfound poise. Each section read like a pulse of her convictions, drawing lines between the myths of old and the challenges of modern life. When the day of the second presentation arrived, she entered the room with a grounded assurance. The conference table stretched in front of her, and Greg's presence loomed again, but today was different. Today, her heart was steady, painted with the assurance of her past struggles. As the presentations began, she prepared to showcase her work. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation as she dove into the ancient texts, unveiling how these stories resonated not just as historical artifacts but as living narratives intertwined with the human experience. The energy in the room was palpable as she spoke, passion intertwining effortlessly with data and insights. When questions rolled in, rather than fearing them, she welcomed them, rebuffing dismissive attitudes with factual precision and heartfelt narratives. Greg's inquiries were sharp, but Melissa found strength in their exchange, articulating her points with clarity and confidence. With every rebuttal, she didn't just defend her academic stance, she conquered the specters of doubt that had haunted her for years. As she concluded, the room erupted in applause, almost as if a tide of recognition had swept through her colleagues. And then she locked eyes with Greg. His expression shifted. For the first time, respect crinkled at the corners of his eyes, acknowledging her transformation. "Good work," he stated simply, words weighted with newfound recognition. They echoed like a bell tolling the end of an era marked by intimidation and self-doubt. Feeling the warmth of affirmations from her peers wash over her, Melissa stood taller than ever, a sense of solid confidence radiating from her. She cherishes the weight of accomplishment that wrapped around her shoulders, a validation of her journey and the trials it had eclipsed. Each small victory fueled a profound metamorphosis that had revealed complexities of her identity, an identity that thrived on ambition, exploration, and embracing both intellect and intuition. As she walked away from the meeting room, a gentle smile graced her lips. She wasn't merely a librarian anymore, she had become a researcher, a storyteller steeped in the rich lineage of transformative narratives, both ancient and contemporary. Each written word and spoken argument threaded together became a testament to her evolution. At that moment, Melissa firmly understood the essential truth: embracing her past with fervor had liberated her present. The struggles governed by fear had been replaced by a distinct clarity: who she had become and who she would continue to strive to be. With a heart full of acceptance and pride, she stepped forward into a vast tapestry of possibilities, ready to carve her next chapter. Today was only the beginning. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support, and don't wait even one more second to share.